Hello. First, many thanks for joining us in our roundtable. And I thought that what I would do is just very quickly go through and give a 2-3 minute um, review of or preview of the way we will start out the discussion. So let me show you this slide first. We'll start with this old philosophical dilemma. It's from John Locke from the middle 17th century. His idea was, well, imagine someone in a room that's very agreeable, that they don't want to leave. While they're in there enjoying the space, someone locks the door from the outside, so they don't know that they are trapped in this room. And Locke asks, well, is this person in this room free? Of course, in a certain sense, they feel free because they don't want to leave the room. They're happy doing the things that they enjoy inside it. But they are not free for this, at least this reason. They're unable to change their preferences or interests. In other words, if they change their mind and want to go somewhere else, they can't, right? So there's this idea that human freedom is integrally tied to the possibility of changing the kinds of things you want, or even more powerfully, the possibility of changing who you are. That would be the lesson we want to take from that. And then we go from there and we tie that John Locke thought experiment to the question of recommendation algorithms. And what we want to say is that in a certain sense, recommendation algorithms are doing the same thing that John Locke's room did by reinforcing the preferences that we have already established. They provide us convenience, but they trap us within those interests. And in the case of Netflix, let's say a trivial example, but nonetheless illustrative, they trap us within the kinds of enjoyments that we have already had. So the idea is, just like in the locked room, if Netflix recommendation algorithm is working well, it's giving us series and films and so on that we want to watch and that we enjoy. But at the same time, because it recommends those films and series and this entertainment from our past habits, it becomes increasingly difficult to develop new interests, new curiosities, a new identity for ourselves. And then we'll say, look, this occurs fairly obviously, at least theoretically, in Netflix, and it certainly occurs on Twitter/X, where we have filter bubbles, right, where people are increasingly funneled toward the kinds of, say, political orientations or musical interests and so on that they have already established. The same thing will go in LinkedIn, where the opportunities you are offered by the platform tend to resemble the roles you've had in the past, or on the sentimental level, something like this would happen on Tinder or whatever dating platform you can imagine. The main idea is that something like Netflix is a simple example to look at, but the stakes are much higher. The recommendation algorithms are increasingly spreading through elements of our lives, and there's no reason to think that this process will diminish. So increasingly, the question of freedom in recommendation algorithms is a pressing human question. It's not just something having to do with Netflix or Spotify. And then in the event, I'll maybe talk a little bit about the specific Netflix example, but for the moment, we will just say that similarity is reinforced by the way the algorithms work in Netflix. Again, we're trapped as who we are. And then there's a question, okay, so what are we going to do about this? How can we get freedom back? If genuine freedom equals the ability to change what we want and who we are, then how can this trap of recommendation algorithms be escaped? And here I propose one possibility is to talk about serendipity, and I define that in a certain way and say, look, what we will say is that in one way or another, no, take that back. What I will say in the introduction is that one way that freedom can be restored or maximized or optimized in recommendation algorithms is through this idea of serendipity. That is the notion that recommendation engines will no longer be aimed at accurately reproducing the preferences and interests you have established. Instead, they will be optimized to provoke curiosity and new interests. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then the conclusion to the introduction is that just simple, what is the problem? The problem is that freedom is limited because we are trapped in our established interests and preferences. One solution is serendipity, and we'll ask, well, what other solutions exist, or what sort of permutations of the idea of serendipity might be interesting. And then we will also ask where work is currently being done on this subject. And very little work is being done directly on the idea of recommendation algorithms and human freedom, but there's quite a bit of parallel work in the area of serendipity, in the area of polarization in social media. So that's the way we will introduce the roundtable. And then what we will do is we'll just go around and ask you questions. How do you relate to these things? What kind of interest do you have in these? How do you understand the problem? What kind of solutions do you imagine? And things like that. So very much looking forward to it. See you soon.